Our film starts in Southern California in 1897. A beautiful brunette wakes up in her bed and is met by a busty blonde vampire who shows up in some mist. The vampire gives the blonde a pearl necklace and then bites her. When the man who was supposed to be guarding the woman, whose name is Roxanne, comes up to see if she's okay, she's nowhere to be found. The man heads to a monastery where he speaks to a monk. This monk is played by Paul Nashi, who is the only name brand actor in this film, so he gets top billing even though he's barely in it. I guess they thought there were people who were going to watch for something other than the fake boobs because anyone could have played this character. Anyway, the guy and the monk head to the vampire's manor, and when they open the coffin, they reveal an older male vampire. The busty blonde then appears with Roxanne and attacks them. They end up staking the two vampires, who then wither away into skeletons. The monk then asks God to make sure his spirit roams the earth until all evil is gone. Fast forward to early 2000s Los Angeles, and we're in the manor of Count Dracula. Dracula, played by someone different this time, calls a vampire woman who we find out is his daughter Martine, and Renfield, who is the only returning actor in the series, who then show up while he's in the middle of watching another vampire woman named Valerie do a strip show. He asks the two to bring Lord Ruthven, aka the vampire from the flashbacks, back to life, and he gives them a book to do it. The two head to the manor where the body is, and all it actually took was pulling the knife out of his heart, and he immediately regenerated, so not sure what the purpose of the book was. The Lord gives us some more backstory about the brunette Roxanne, who was the love of his life, but the busty vampiress, who was his sister Diana, also wanted her, and the guy with the gun who saved her was Roxanne's brother. Martine and Renfield take off because basically they couldn't care less about some old vampire crying over a woman. The Lord then goes out and finds some woman walking down a dark alley. He bites her and begins bleeding from the eyes. You then see the ghost of the monk, and the Lord reads in his book that finally has a purpose, that the dagger that impaled him made it so that human blood makes him sick unless ingested from another vampire. The Count then goes downstairs and pulls the stake out of Diana, regenerating her. She then laughs at him when he informs her that she's the only way that he can live. We are then introduced to new Roxanne, who is having a nice conversation with her roommate before going through an old family album. The next evening, Diana says she wants to go find Roxanne, but first needs to find nourishment. She does some sexy fang poses before heading to a strip club where Lord Ruthven's previous victim works as a dancer and gives her some diamonds for her dance. After her shift, the dancer's much older boyfriend Mal gets jealous at Diana's treatment of her and yells at her, unbeknownst to him, that Diana is watching. After the dancer goes back to her room, Diana confronts Mal and strangles him to death in the hallway of the apartment. She then heads to the dancer's room and feeds on her. Back at the manor, we see that Diana has now taken the dancer, whose name is Lilith, in. Lord Ruthven complains that he needs nourishment, and Diana bleeds herself into a goblet for him. After he drinks, he then fantasizes about he and Roxanne as a vampire couple, which is pretty messed up, as we then find out in the next scene that Anna isn't her roommate, Roxanne is a lesbian. We then get a montage of Diana going around and feeding on various prostitutes and strippers, and Lord Ruthven drinking Diana's blood from the goblet. Ruthven then says he almost feels good enough to go find Roxanne. Diana says not if she finds her first, though she could have been looking this whole time. After a throwaway scene of Roxanne once again looking at photo albums and Anna getting annoyed by it, we see Lord Ruthven playing an organ, bragging about how good he feels to Diana and Lilith. Diana leaves Lilith with him to distract him while she heads out and finds Roxanne. When she does, she gets mad that Roxanne doesn't remember something that technically never happened to her and begins to seduce her. Meanwhile, Lord Ruthven decides to take off and look for her himself. He sees a woman taking out the garbage and he bites her thinking it's Roxanne, but it ends up being Anna. When he asks her where Roxanne is, Anna tells her she doesn't know. Back with Dracula, he once again interrupts Valerie's seduction to tell Martine to go to the Ruthvens and tell them to cut out all the leaving bodies everywhere stuff. Back with the Ruthvens, Lord Ruthven arrives back home and finds that Diana has Roxanne. Diana has Lilith holding the Lord at bay with a cross, which I guess doesn't affect her because she has her hand wrapped, and he's forced to watch as Diana bites and turns Roxanne, making her loyal to her, much like Lilith. Ruthven then knocks the cross out of Lilith's hand and stakes Diana. After Diana dies, Roxanne wakes up and demands for her, expressing her love and loyalty. The Lord debates staking her when he hears this, but just before he does, the monk begins to haunt him until he kills himself. The monk's spirit then says his deed is done now that the Ruthvens are gone, even though bringing them back seems pretty easy. Martine and Renfield then walk in to find the Ruthvens dead. They decide against reviving them, and before they leave, they find Lilith and Anna in a back room getting intimate. When Renfield suggests staking them, Martine instead sends him off and decides to join them. The film ends with Martine and Renfield interrupting Dracula and Valerie again, this time bringing in all the women that die in a bit who are now vampires themselves. Dracula then decides to take them all in.